So it was the middle of spring, and I attended high school in a small town in Tennessee right outside of Nashville. I didn't have any friends. I mostly just stuck to my studies and enjoyed keeping to myself. For reference, I'm a female, and I was around 17 at the time of this story. The only people who I did talk to were three of my closer friends, all of them being guys. They were basically my friend group at the time, and I had feelings for one of them. He didn't know it yet, as I tend to hide my feelings pretty good, but didn't know how or when to make a move. I've never had a date before, and my confidence was at an all-time low. Valentine's Day was around the corner, and my sister kept pushing me to ask him to the Valentine's Day dance. Dancing was never really my thing, and he seemed way out of my league, but that didn't stop me from making my move. My sister drove me over to our local Walgreens so I could pick out a card for him, asking if he'd be my date. I'm in the card section, and I pick out a really cute card I thought he might like and get into the checkout line. As I'm in line to pay, I see a slightly disheveled man walk in wearing a cap that said Hoyt. I, for some reason, make eye contact with him, and he then goes in line right behind me. I go on my phone, acting like I didn't see him when he taps me on my shoulder. I turn around and he says, "So, is that for your little boyfriend?" Right off the bat, this guy didn't look right and wore torn, dirty clothes and looked like he hadn't been to the gym in years. I uncomfortably chuckle, saying yes and immediately tending to my phone. He then leans over and says, "Do you need a ride home? I can give you a ride." I tell him no thank you and gave him the hint that I wasn't interested. My turn in line finally came, and I purchased the card and immediately leave, telling my sister about the man. Living in a southern state, it wasn't uncommon for people like this to show up once in a while. Now, fast forward to Valentine's Day. I gathered the courage to ask him out and did so by giving him the card. To my surprise, he accepted, and I felt extremely relieved and excited the whole day. Now this is when things start taking a turn for the worse. The next morning, I'm outside my bus stop waiting to go to school when I see a red truck coming my way. The truck slowly passes by and the windows roll down, and there in the driver's seat is the same man from the store. He looks at me, wearing the all too familiar hat that said Hoyt, and then driving off. I didn't tell anyone else about him, and I thankfully never saw him again. My name is Emily, and this took place back in 2014 when I was a sophomore at my new high school. For reference, I'm a female, and I was 16 years old at the time of this story. I had just moved to the school from my hometown in Savannah due to a job change from my dad where he could make a better income. Because I was a new student at the school, I was definitely no popular kid. I was in the honors program and was your typical nerd wandering around who only focused on her studies and had trouble interacting with new people. That one girl who you'd think has no life and no friends, only to end up being the most brightest student in school. Even though I had zero friends at the time, there was still this one guy in two of my classes who seemed really nice. His name was Jake, and he was a pretty cool guy for the most part. He'd ask me about what I was studying, if I liked the school, and so on and so forth. After a while, I started to consider Jake as a real friend and was glad to finally meet someone. On Valentine's Day, I was sitting down at a table at school, eating my lunch, when Jake walks up to me and straight up asks me if I wanted to be his Valentine. The thing was that he had brought me a bouquet of roses and a bunch of chocolate, which I found odd. I was speechless at first and really wasn't expecting him to do that. Jake and I only met not even a month ago, and I didn't really see him other than a friend. I politely turn him down, and he begins to give me a look full of disappointment, and he then gets up to leave. I felt bad, obviously, but I really wasn't looking for a relationship at the time, as I had other stuff to worry about. That night, I was finishing up my project that was due for my chemistry class when I heard my Skype start ringing. I take a look at my computer and see that an unknown number is calling me. After all, I have been begging one of my cousins to try it out so we could chat through there. When I answer the call, I heard the all too familiar voice of Jake on the other end of the line. I immediately hang up and turn off my laptop for the rest of the night, not wanting to talk with Jake anymore. I have no idea as to how he managed to get my Skype, not to mention my phone number. I didn't sleep well for the rest of the night, and I was afraid of going to school the next day, fearing Jake and what he'd possibly say to me. For whatever reason, I finally decided to go and was surprised to find that Jake had not been in either one of my classes. It was strange, but I was honestly relieved. During one of my classes, we were all going over our tests when my teacher gets a phone call and tells me to go to the office for something. The sophomores at the school were still a bit immature, and I was bombarded with oohs and laughs while walking out. I get to the main office and go into the conference room and was greeted to 3 police officers as well as my principal and another student that I have never seen before sobbing. They tell me to have a seat and get straight to the point and begin to ask me about Jake. My face went pale and I was honest with them and told them that he had been stalking me for a few days now. They went on to explain that Jake was planning on killing me and another student on that specific day because we had both rejected him to be his Valentine. They didn't say how he was planning on doing this, but they were eventually told by another student that he was planning on something and my name was mentioned. I was petrified and couldn't even move due to the sheer panic I was feeling inside of me. The whole school had issued an email and a phone call to all the staff and parents addressing that there was a threat and that the school would be on high alert. They had refused to give me any more information about how they found this out or as to why he didn't show up for school. My parents pulled me out of school for a week until Jake was taken care of and that there wouldn't be a threat to me anymore. It turns out, Jake was known to have told threats against people, especially females who have turned him down or did him wrong in some way. There hasn't been any clear evidence that he's ever done something like that in the past, but just because he's never done it before, it doesn't mean that he'll never do it. I never saw Jake again after that incident, and he thankfully never returned to school. I still don't know if he was expelled, locked in prison, or perhaps something even worse. This incident will forever be with me for the rest of my life, knowing that someone had the sheer desire to end my life, all because of a rejection. This happened to me around 2 years ago when I was in my second semester of college. This incident happened to a couple of friends and it will forever change the way we think of Valentine's Day. I attended school outside of Houston and had been majoring in graphic design at the time and had also been working a full-time job. Because I was in graphic design, I had been involved in a few clubs on campus with a few friends that were studying the same thing. One day, two of my friends from my club invited me to a frat party that a few other people would be hosting for Valentine's Day. I wasn't really a party type of person and started having some doubts of whether to go or not. I had a crap ton of homework to do, but needed a breather to help take my mind off school for a while. They immediately started pushing me to go and talked about how it would be a fun time and get away from all the stress. After a ton of convincing, I had to agree in the end. Needless to say, we drive over to the fraternity home, and the second we step in, we were greeted with the unwanted smell of marijuana. Seeing as we were college kids, we were used to this type of stuff, and as much as we didn't like it, it wasn't our problem. Me and my friends go into the kitchen to grab a few snacks while talking to a few people and budging me to talk to a few girls. Around 30 minutes into the party, I go upstairs to use the restroom and tell my friends that I'll be back soon. I do my business, and as soon as I turn off the light, I hear 4 loud bangs coming from downstairs, followed by everyone screaming. My blood ran cold, and I quickly hurried down the stairs to see that everyone is laying down on the floor with their hands over their heads. Toward the front of the door were 2 Spanish men dressed in all black, armed with what appeared to be shotguns. For some stupid luck, they didn't spot me, but I was terrified to say the least. Both men were shouting at the top of their lungs for everyone to stay down or that they would shoot someone if anyone screamed or moved. Unfortunately, as they said this, one of the girls screamed and didn't make it. One by one, they started going to people, taking their money and other belongings out of their pockets, and I tried my best to stay as quiet as possible. Suddenly, I hear sirens in the distance, and the 2 men rush out of the house and drive off in a truck of some sort. Not even a minute later, the police arrive, and we all were ordered to go back to our dorms and inform our families. The fraternity home was closed for a week, and I didn't go to any more frat parties for the rest of the semester.